Let's jump right into this explainer and look at a wild biological mystery that is literally located right at the base of your spine. We're talking about an evolutionary whodunit here, one that spans tens of millions of years, features a totally rogue genetic accident, and actually reveals a pretty massive hidden trade-off baked directly into your DNA. Let's get into it.
So, let's start with a pretty obvious question. Why don't you have a tail? I mean, think about almost every other mammal around us, right? Dogs are wagging them to communicate, cats use them to perfectly balance on narrow fences, and even tiny, unremarkable mice have those long, twitchy tails trailing behind them. But humans, and our closest relatives, the great apes, we completely lack them. Somewhere in our specific branch of the family tree, this incredibly useful appendage just vanished.
And the crazy thing is, you are literally sitting on the answer right now. For the longest time, if you looked at old anatomy books from the 1800s, they'd lazily describe the human tailbone, the coccyx, as just leftover biological garbage. They basically assumed evolution was sloppy and just forgot to clean it up. But, evolution doesn't really forget. Every single structure costs energy to build and maintain. The coccyx isn't a mistake. It's a highly functional structure anchoring muscles and ligaments that help you sit and hold your posture. It's doing a crucial job, all while hiding a very ancient genetic secret.
To unravel that secret, we really need to contrast two distinct groups. On one hand, you have monkeys, thousands of species, who have kept their fully intact tails over millions of years of evolution. On the other hand, you have the ape lineage. This includes gibbons, orangutans, gorillas, chimps, bonobos, and of course, us humans. In our specific branch of the primate family tree, and literally only in our branch, the visible tail just mysteriously vanished. Now, evolution rarely throws away a perfectly good tool for no reason, so this has been a massive puzzle for scientists.
Tracking the timeline really helps piece this all together. About 25 million years ago, our ancestral apes lost their tails. But here's the part that absolutely blows my mind. Human embryos actually start growing a visible tail structure in the womb at about 5 to 6 weeks of gestation, just like every other mammal. But then, it just stops. For decades, scientists knew exactly when the tail disappeared in our evolutionary history, but they had absolutely no idea how it happened. That is, until 2021, when a team of researchers at NYU finally cracked the case.
So, that embryonic tail doesn't just fall off. It regresses through a process called apoptosis. This is programmed cell death. It's the exact same delicate, totally normal mechanism your body uses in the womb to sculpt individual fingers out of what initially start off as webbed embryonic hands. The cells in that little embryonic tail are basically given a scheduled order to self-destruct, leaving behind just a small stack of fused vertebrae, your coccyx. This told researchers that there had to be a very specific instruction somewhere in our DNA telling that tail to stop growing.
And that leads us straight to the culprit, something called an ALU element. The NYU team went digging inside a master body axis gene called TBXT. This gene is absolutely crucial for building the embryonic tail. And right inside this gene, they found an ALU element sitting exactly where it shouldn't be. You can kind of think of an ALU element as a piece of jumping DNA. It copies itself and inserts into random places in your genome, acting remarkably like a computer virus. Usually, this completely breaks the gene, which is obviously bad news. But sometimes, it lands in just the right spot.
Here's exactly how this ancient accident played out. That ALU element inserted itself directly into the TBXT gene. But instead of destroying the gene entirely, it just altered how the gene's instructions were spliced and read. It effectively short-circuited the tail-building process partway through. To prove this was the cause, the scientists actually genetically engineered lab mice with this exact same mutation in their TBXT gene. And the result? No way. The mice grew little or no tails. Just a single random insertion was enough to recreate the defining anatomical change of every ape on Earth.
But here is the dramatic twist that absolutely nobody saw coming. It was a remarkably messy trait. You gain one thing, you risk another. When scientists looked closely at those tailless, engineered mice, they found a measurable spike in neural tube defects. We're talking about conditions where the spinal cord doesn't close properly, very much like spina bifida in humans. See, the exact same genetic machinery that builds the tail also helps close and shape the neural tube, so messing with one system meant risking some serious collateral damage in the other.
This beautifully and honestly tragically illustrates the profound cost of evolution. Our species might be walking around today with an ancient evolutionary scar baked directly into how our spinal cords form.
Losing the tail loaded a lingering, hidden risk into human pregnancy that actually still exists and shows up today. It just goes to show that evolution isn't this tidy, perfect design process. It's raw. It's a messy compromise, and clearly the benefit of losing the tail must have been so incredibly massive that it somehow outweighed the risk of these spinal defects.
Which obviously begs the question, what was that massive benefit? Well, picture ancestral monkeys. They mostly run along the tops of branches on all fours. For that kind of movement, a tail is brilliant. It's a rudder, a counterbalance, just an incredible tool. But ancestral apes started shifting to a completely different strategy called suspensory locomotion. Basically, they started hanging and swinging arm over arm beneath the branches. And in that dangling, swinging style of movement, a long, heavy tail isn't just useless, it's a huge structural liability that totally throws off your balance.
And this right here perfectly highlights how deeply opportunistic biology really is. When a body part becomes harmful, evolution deletes it. But in this case, there was a completely accidental side effect. Losing the tail fundamentally shifted how the pelvis and lower spine were built. It changed where muscles attached and freed up a lot of structural space. Millions of years later, when a completely different ape lineage, our lineage, eventually started experimenting with walking upright on two legs, that repurposed pelvic architecture turned out to be incredibly useful. The lost tail was basically an accidental structural blueprint for walking on two legs.
Now, I want you to focus on this number, 0. 0 is the exact number of times evolution actually deleted the tail blueprint from your DNA. The instructions to grow a full tail are still sitting right there in your genome, fully loaded, just totally dormant. Evolution just found a clever little hack to switch it off, using that ALU element. And we know for a fact that the blueprint is still there because very rarely that switch fails. There are medically documented cases of human babies born with actual, soft, flexible tails because they just didn't get that signal to regress in the womb.
This means your body is essentially a living museum, just packed full of switched-off wiring and old solutions. Take your appendix. It's a safe house for beneficial gut bacteria. Or your wisdom teeth. That's just a fading echo of wider jaws built to chew really coarse food. Even goosebumps. They're just a leftover reflex from back when we had thick body hair and needed to fluff it up to trap warmth or look intimidating. Evolution acts way less like a master sculptor carving away stone and much more like a lazy stagehand who just turns off the lights while leaving all the original wiring perfectly intact.
And the strategy of losing a tail isn't just an ape thing. It's a prime example of convergent evolution. This is when totally unrelated species independently arrive at similar physical solutions because they're facing similar environments. Think about the Manx cat, that breed famous for having no tail. They don't have our ape mutation, they have a completely different genetic mutation that achieved the exact same result. Certain frogs and lizards have done it too. When a lifestyle starts making a tail a liability, nature independently rediscovers the brilliant idea of getting rid of it, over and over again.
So the next time you happen to sit down a little too hard and bruise your tailbone, just remember that you are feeling the physical echo of a 25-million-year-old genetic accident. Which really leaves us with this final, kind of wild question to ponder. If the complete wiring for a functioning tail has been sitting in your cells, totally dormant this entire time, what else is sitting inside your DNA, quietly switched off, just waiting for the wrong instruction to flip it back on?